Do not apply to any school without making sure that they know these things about you. The first four questions from the first column should likely be answered via your diversity statement or via any optional questions that your school has on the application. Oftentimes schools have application questions that touch on these sorts of things, so make sure you answer those. Those questions are typically optional, but for a student that has answers to these questions that can benefit them, not answering them, is really a silly thing to do. So for example, schools sometimes will include questions on their application that asks what your parents do for a living, what your parents' highest level of education is, how much money your parents make. Those questions are all designed to help the school decipher your socioeconomic status and background. It tells something about your upbringing that you ought to share with them. I like to tell minority students specifically not to be ashamed of what these answers may reveal, in part because while we do live in a nation where oftentimes classism is something that, presents barriers to us, in the law school admission sense, these questions actually, and the answers to them, actually will help you instead of harm you. So I like to stress that because it is important, especially if you don't know. Like, I would have never known how much my parents made when I was applying to law school. So if you don't know the answers to these questions, make sure you talk to your parents. Ask them these things. Ask them what their annual salary is, because that's only going to be beneficial to you. So make sure you explain that to them as well, especially if there's a discomfort, between talking about money, which is often the case, within minority communities. All right. The last two questions on the first column likely should be answered via your resume. Do not make the mistake of making your personal statement just a summary of your resume. But also don't make another mistake. One of the biggest mistakes that I often see minority students make when applying to law school is underselling themselves on their resume. Know that your resume can and usually should be 2 pages in length. It should include everything that you have done besides just being a student. And when I say everything, I mean that everything from working at McDonald's, if you did any janitorial work, if you clerked at a law firm, if you periodically submitted op-eds to your school paper, if you participated in protest or organizing. All of that should be on your resume. You should also include all honors, awards, major writings, extracurriculars, sports, you name it, that should be included on your resume. And when I say sports, I don't mean just sports where you play for the school team. Intramural sports count as well. So include all that stuff in your resume. With regard to the second column, the first 3 main bullets, along with their subtitles, should be answered in some way via your personal statement and letters of recommendation. The question about an upward trend in grades, if applicable, needs to be answered in either an addendum or via an optional question. Some schools actually flat out ask you, is there anything you want me to know about your LSAT score or GPA? If so, tell them. If you have something to say it there. Then the last 2 questions I added simply because if your answer is yes to either of them, I want to flag that we need to chat further, because there is additional information that I need to provide about how to navigate applying as a transfer student or being on the wait list that just is simply a bit beyond the scope of today's course.